Hello and welcome to the course. This is the first section of this course where I'm going to demonstrate you the first line that we are going to analyze inside this course, and this line is called Catalan endgame. This is just how I suggest to call it. You can use any other name for this line. However, the main idea is that here in this line you have to play the end game, which is slightly better, and this end game is difficult to play for black. Of course, not everyone likes to play end games. Many people, including me, prefer to finish the game in the middle game by a strong attack on the king side and checkmate or extra material, but sometimes we have to play the end games, and this end game is very comfortable for white. That's why I recommend it. Okay, d4, d5 here, c4, e6, knight f3, knight f6, g3, bishop, g2 after d captures on c4, then c5. One of the main moves, actually. Here, white castles. Knight c6, and in this position there are three moves that white can play. Knight a5, queen a4, and of course d takes on c5, which is considered to be the strongest one. Of course, I recommend you to take the pawn on c5, but I will also show you these two other. For example, if knight e5, then bishop d7, knight a3, with the idea to take on c4 with the a knight, bishop d7, c takes on d4, knight takes on c4, bishop e7, bishop e4, then knight d5, and here white takes on d7, knight takes on f4, bishop c6 to ruin the pawn structure, b takes on c6, and then the knight from d7 goes back, attacking the pawn on c6, while the knight from f4 has to go back to g6 maybe. Then knight takes on c6, attacking the queen and bishop simultaneously. But after queen d5, to take the bishop on e7 is not the best idea. It's much better to play knight 4 to a5, with an idea to play queen a4 or queen b3. Bishop f6, queen b3, for example. Of course, that's not the only move, but maybe one of the best moves. Maybe b4 also makes sense. b4 with the pawn here, but queen b3, queen takes, knight takes, d3, he captures on b2, rook a b1, attacking the bishop. This bishop retreats to f6, and after rook a c1 our position is really good. The main factor is the knight on c6 that is supported by the other knight. The knight on c6 prevents one of the enemy rooks coming to b8, as well as it makes the a7 pawn a weakness. For example, rook hc8, rook b7 just. Here rook c7 doesn't work because of knight b8 check, discovered attack. And in this position, after king e8, white is slightly better. At least he keeps the pressure on black position, and these pieces, white pieces, are more active, much more active. So if you want, you can play this line. Knight f5 is a possible move. Another move is queen a4, bishop d7, queen c4, b5, queen c3, c takes on d4, knight takes on d4, then knight takes on d4. We have no time to capture on e8 because of knight e2 fork. That's why here we take rook c8, bishop f4, bishop c5, queen retreats, and queen b6. Then we play knight d2 with the idea to play knight b3 or knight e4. Castle knight e4, knight goes to d5. If he captures, then we take with the bishop, simultaneously attacking on h7, and here the bishop on d7. But be careful with the bishop on d7, your queen can be easily trapped there. Knight d5, knight g5, g6, bishop to e5, using the weaknesses on the dark squares. f6, for example, in this position doesn't work because of bishop d5 move. So bishop e7, for example, knight retreats to f3, and after a few moves I can say that white is just slightly better. So I don't really recommend queen a4, but if you want to play the position with many pieces on the board and you believe you have better chances to play without any mistakes, while your opponent, for example, usually likes to simplify the position, that's why this variation can be suitable for you. Let's go back to the main line, which is d takes on c5. Then here queen d1, rook d1, and we have to play this endgame. Bishop c5, and here there are two options, knight f d2 like Magnus Carlsen plays, and knight b to d2. They both are playable. As for me, I would choose knight f d2. However, many grandmasters plays knight b to d2 and they are okay with that. Let me first show knight f to d2. Knight a5, knight a3 to take the pawn on c4. That's why here black has to take on a3, b takes on a3. And in this position the strongest move is bishop d7, and I believe only this move helps black to equalize the position. Bishop b2, bishop b5, bishop c3 attacking the knight, knight retreats, rook a to b1 attacking the bishop, bishop goes to a6, knight e4 to trade the knights, and after castle these two bishops are really strong, but white is down a pawn. This is the main factor. So of course here a4 should be played to prevent any b5 activity. Of course white definitely has a compensation for that pawn because of his piece's activity, but I'm not sure if it's enough to win. You have to play this, of course, playable position, but without a pawn, however with two strong bishops. If, for example, instead of bishop d7, black does something else, like maybe knight d5, which is a good move that can be played by a human. Knight e4, castle, bishop d2 attacking the knight, b6, rook ac1, bishop a6, making this bishop a bad one. Then, for example, bishop a5, pawn to a5, and knight c5. Here I would say that white is slightly better, and he's likely to win the pawn on c4 back. So, for example, bishop b5, for example, a4 can be played, or even just bishop d5. I think it's even stronger here than rook d5. Of course, we will analyze these lines a little bit deeper in the games that I will present here in this section, including the game played by Magnus Carlsen, where he was white, and how he successfully won that game. So knight fd2 is a good and possible move. Knight b to d2 is a brilliant move, except one move. If here black plays c3, he is able to get a playable position with good chances to equalize it. If, for example, he plays a different move, like knight g4, what looks also a natural move, then knight e4, and in a few moves you'll see that the position is much better for white. Knight e4, knight f6, g takes f6, bishop takes on b2. And yes, in this position we are still one pawn down, but of course there is a full compensation. Moreover, there is more than a full compensation. If instead of knight g4 something like king e7, then knight c4, winning the pawn back, knight e4, attacking on f2, e3, knight d6, knight c2 e5, knight takes e5, knight takes knight, rook d8, then for example bishop d2 with the idea to get the rook to c1 and also to activate the bishop, a5, rook ac1 attacking the bishop, and it's difficult to find a good square for the bishop because on b6 the bishop will be under attack, for example after rook c6. And here white is clearly winning. Black can't really take the pawn on c6. If he does this, then his rook on e8 is hanging. And this is how white wins the exchange. Oh, of course, black can play rook a6 here and save his rook. Then knight goes to c6 and white is one pawn up. For example, from here you may understand that white is clearly better. That's why c3 is the most competitive move here, and white has to take with the pawn. That slightly ruins the pawn structure on the queen side, but anyway, even here white has a good plan that can provide him with slight advantage. Castle, knight e1. This is the main move in this position, with the idea to get the knight to d3. This is the best plan. When the knight is on d3, it can help to advance the c-pawn. If we can play c5 at some point, then I would definitely say that white is clearly better. Okay, in this position there are three moves that black can play. It's bishop e7, bishop d7, and rook d8. Well, let's start with rook d8 first. Knight d3 attacking the bishop, bishop e7, rook b1 with the idea to keep the pressure on b7 so that this bishop can't move, knight d5 attacking on c3, bishop b2, bishop d7, bishop a1, still the pawn is hanging here, b6, c4, knight retreats, and knight b3. One of our plans is to play c5, for example bishop e8, c5. And if knight d5, rook d to c1, we don't want to trade the material, we would like to keep more pieces on the board. Why? Because here we dominate and we have more space in the center on the queen side and as well as on the king side. That's why with more pieces on the board it will be difficult for black to initiate his pieces maneuvers. Rook a b8, then c takes on b6. He can take with the pawn of course, but with the rook is a better move. Knight e5, knight c to b4, and after bishop d4 white is better. The a7 is a weakness. Also the light square bishop on g2 is good, and black has to keep his knight on d5 to be able to block the diagonal. Bishop d7 is another option. If so, rook b1 attacking on b7, knight d8, knight b3, bishop b6, c4 with the idea to play c5, rook c8, still c5. Why? Because if he captures, then knight c5, rook c5, and bishop a3, winning the exchange. That's why here he has to play bishop c7 maybe. Then it's up to you how to play. For example, the best move that I recommend here is knight d4. Knight d5, bishop b2, bishop a4, rook d3, knight c6, and then knight e to f3, and white is slightly better. You may also play bishop g5, not the best move, but a possible continuation. Then bishop c6, you take on f6 to ruin the pawn structure, then knight goes to e4. So that then knight goes to e4, so that black captures one of the knights with his dark squared bishop. This is how he tries to simplify the position, but due to the pawn on c5, his b7 pawn is a weakness. Then, for example, rook a4 to attack the queen side. Again, in this position, white is just slightly better. And bishop e7, the last move that I want to show you. Here, knight d3. And in this position, again, he has a choice to play knight d5 or bishop d7. If bishop d7, then knight b3, b6, c4, rook d8, bishop b2, rook a c8, rook a c1, knight b4, knight takes on b4, bishop takes on b4, then bishop b7 attacking the rook, rook b8, bishop retreats. He can go back, but if he plays a better move like bishop e8 here, if he plays a better move, bishop e8, then we trade the rooks, c5, and in this position, to be able to equalize the position, he should notice this option, b takes c5, a3 and c4. Only this move can equalize the position. Rook takes on c4, bishop retreats to f8, for example, and then of course white pieces are slightly better, but there is nothing concrete, and I'm not sure that white is able to realize this activity into any advantage. Only in case if black makes a mistake. However, it's not easy to realize that after a3, black has to play c4 and then retreat with the bishop. If, for example, he plays a different move, rook c8, then of course white is much better. He plays bishop b7, and then after c6 and bishop e5, he is almost winning. For example, at least white wins the exchange. However, instead of playing a3 in this position, we may play king g2 if we don't want to simplify the position. Knight d5, a3 now, c4, rook c4, bishop goes back, and knight d4. This is where black has to play accurately. This position is almost the same, but because of our knight's position and we also improved our king's position, there are more advantage for us. However, anyway, if here black plays correctly, it is a draw with no chances for win. However, if in this position black plays correctly, there is no chances for white to win. Let's go back. What if knight d5 now? Bishop b2, bishop d7, knight b3, knight c5, then we trade on c5 and try to increase the pressure. Knight a5, we win a pawn back, and after that two pawns are hanging on b7 and d5. For example, knight a5 to protect on b7, we play bishop d5, and then rook d4. So we won a pawn, but the best thing that black can get here is to try to trade the knights and then play the endgame with bishops of opposite color. That is likely to be drawish. However, black is still down a pawn, and his task is to make no mistakes and try to save the position. And it's a difficult task even for a strong grandmaster. At least in any of these lines, your position is not worse, and if especially black makes just a small inaccuracy, then you could get winning chances. Later I will illustrate how it happens, what can happen if black makes no mistakes, and even no inaccuracies, and what happens if white makes a few inaccuracies but black plays correctly, how white can exploit his advantage in this variation. Thank you for your attention. We will continue in the next lectures where I'm going to demonstrate you 3 game examples.